After 7 years of being excluded from family reunions, my parents had the boldness to show up at the front gates of my mansion, smiling like nothing had ever happened. If you're watching this, know that every word is true, and it still burns whenever I think about it. My name is Bill Gates. I'm in my late 20s now, and I worked my way to the top. I live in a mansion out in New Orleans, a place I bought with my hard-earned money. No one handed me anything. My parents, Emma and Harry, made sure of that. Growing up, it was always clear who their favorite was. My brother, Tom, could do no wrong. He was the golden boy, the one they poured their love, money, and attention into. He always got whatever he wanted. My opinions were always brushed aside like I was a ghost. I wanted to follow my own path, but they wouldn't let me. They keep saying I want to stain the image of the Lopez family. The final break came when I turned 18. I told them I wasn't going to study the course they wanted. They didn't just argue, they cut me off. No more financial support, no more emotional support. It was as if the moment I chose myself, I stopped being their son. But the deepest wound wasn't just being cut off. It was the rejection that followed year after year. The first time, I didn't even believe it was happening. I had driven 6 hours to a family reunion, desperate to belong, hoping maybe things could get better. I arrived, ready to swallow my pride and just see everyone again. My mother met me at the door. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Your presence isn't needed." I can still feel how those words pierced through my chest like a sword. She didn't shout. She didn't argue. She just dismissed me like I was a stranger who had wandered onto their porch. The people inside, laughing and sharing food, were my family, but I wasn't welcome. That night, I sat in my car in the driveway for what felt like hours. I watched the lights in the windows, heard the faint sounds of music and voices carrying through the air. They didn't come out to check on me. No one asked why I had come. No one cared. From that moment, the message was clear. I wasn't family anymore. It wasn't just about that reunion. It became the pattern of my life for the next 7 years. Every birthday, every holiday, every gathering was carried on without me. They never once reached out, not even once did they invite me back. So when I say my parents showing up at my mansion gates was audacious, I mean it. After everything they did to make me feel like I didn't belong, they stood there smiling as if they were the best parents to me. And all I could think was, after 8 years of silence, now you come to me. Every year, the same thing happened. Everyone in the family got an invitation to the reunion except me. At first, I thought maybe it was a mistake. Maybe they just forgot. But it wasn't. The invites kept going out to everyone else. My cousins, aunts, uncles, and even distant relatives who lived in states away. But never me. My name was never on those envelopes. It was like I had been erased on purpose. There was a time I visited home, and I noticed the pictures framed neatly on the living room wall. Family smiles stretched wide, tables full of food, kids playing in the background. Picture after picture, year after year, everyone was there. Everyone but me. Not one photo had me in it. My presence in the family was gone like I never existed. Seeing those photos hurt more than I could explain. It wasn't just that I was missing. It was that no one seemed to notice or care. That rejection cut into me deeper than anything else. I looked at those photos and felt like I had been erased from my own bloodline. Everyone always wants a family that would always make them feel loved, but that was definitely not my family. Every year, they reminded me that I wasn't one of them. Meanwhile, Tom's life looked like something out of a dream. He was always the golden boy. But after I was pushed aside, they poured everything into him. He got the best of everything. New cars, paid tuition, and an apartment funded by our parents when he wanted to have his own space. They celebrated every step he took, every award he won, every milestone he reached. His life was one long applause, backed by the people who had turned their backs on me. While he thrived under their shadow, I was out there clawing my way forward alone. I worked 3 jobs just to make ends meet. Mornings, I dragged myself to class half awake. Afternoons, I did shifts that blurred together. and nights I served tables in noisy diners. I would collapse into bed with barely enough energy to breathe and then get up and do it all over again the next day. Not once did I get a call from home asking how I was doing. Not once did anyone offer to help. There were times I was so close to breaking down, wondering if maybe they were right, that I wasn't worth it, that maybe I didn't deserve a place at their table. That pain aided me for years. But slowly, piece by piece, I learned something important. I learned not to expect a seat that was never mine to begin with. I learned that if they didn't want me, then I had to want myself. And as much as it hurt, it forced me to build my own life without waiting for their approval. By the time those reunions came around each year, I stopped asking, stopped hoping, stopped checking the mailbox. The seat I once begged for was never offered, and I had no choice but to accept that I was on my own. I spent my early years running on very little sleep. At night, I worked in diners, wiping tables and carrying heavy trays until my feet ached. In the mornings, I sat in crowded lecture halls, fighting to keep my eyes open while trying to hold on to every word the professors said. It felt like two separate lives. One where I was invisible in a greasy apron, and another where I pushed myself to learn, hoping knowledge would give me a way out. I didn't have parents sending me money or covering my rent. Everything came from my own sweat. After graduation, I knew I couldn't just work for someone else forever. I needed something that was mine. I started small, offering to stage homes for real estate agents. At first, I only had secondhand furniture and a couple of cheap decorations, but I had an eye for design. I could make a dull room look alive, and slowly people started to notice. I spent long nights loading furniture into rented vans, painting walls, fixing lights, and then rushing off to meet clients who barely knew my name. I handled every single detail myself, even the bookkeeping. Every contract I signed felt like it was written in my blood and sweat. There were no shortcuts, no easy breaks. Each step forward was because I refused to stop, even when I was exhausted. Then came the turning point. A high-profile client, someone well-known in the business world, decided to take a chance on me. I remember walking into their giant house with nothing but my sketchbook and my nerves. But when I showed them my ideas, they trusted me. That project changed everything. Once people saw my work in that home, the calls started coming in. Suddenly, I wasn't just staging houses. I was being asked to design entire interiors. With every dollar I earned, I thought carefully. I didn't blow it on luxury I couldn't afford. I invested, expanded, and hired help where I needed it. I grew my little staging service into a full luxury interior design firm. Clients came to me because they wanted the best, and I always delivered. My name began to mean something in the industry, and that was worth more to me than any approval I had once begged from my family. By the time I turned 26, I had saved enough to buy what I once thought was impossible, my dream home. It was a sprawling mansion tucked away in New Orleans. When I walked into it for the first time, the sunlight spilling across the polished floors, I felt something I had never felt before. I stood there in the empty space and swore to myself, this house is for me and only me. It wasn't about showing off, and it wasn't about revenge. It was about finally having a place to call my own, built with nothing but my own will. It had been 7 long years without a single word from my parents when the silence finally cracked. One evening my phone rang, and the name on the screen surprised me. Jennifer, my cousin. We hadn't spoken in a long time, so I answered with a little caution in my voice. She didn't waste time with small talk. Her first words were, "Bill, I think you should know your parents are talking about visiting you." For a moment, I just stared into the distance, the phone pressed against my ear. Visiting me? After all this time, the laugh that slipped out wasn't joyful. It was bitter, sharp, the kind of laugh that comes from old wounds. They never called when I was broke. They never reached out when I was lonely in some tiny apartment. They never even checked when I was sick. And now, suddenly, they wanted to show up at my door. The irony was almost too much to take. As Jennifer kept talking, I drifted into a memory I wished I could forget. It was a night years ago when I had been working too many shifts and pushing myself too hard. My body gave out and I collapsed. I woke up in a hospital bed with an infusion set in my arm. The sterile white walls were pressing down on me. I remember staring at the clock on the wall, waiting, hoping maybe someone from my family would come through the door. Nobody came. Not a call, not a visit, nothing. I lay there alone, my body weak, and my spirit even weaker, realizing I could vanish from the world and they might not even notice. That memory stayed with me like a scar. Snapping back to the present, I heard Jennifer's worried voice asking if I was okay. I told her I was fine, but inside I was already bracing myself. The thought of them standing at my gates, pretending like nothing had happened, made my stomach twist. I wasn't that 18-year-old boy anymore, begging for a seat at their table. I wasn't the lonely college student praying for a phone call. I was stronger now, hardened by every trial I had gone through alone. I thanked Jennifer for giving me a head start. She sounded hesitant, like she wasn't sure if she should have told me, but I was glad she did. Knowledge was power, and I needed to be ready. After we hung up, I sat in my living room, staring at the tall windows that looked out over the fields. I whispered to myself, almost like a promise. If they show up, I won't fold. It wasn't anger driving me in that moment. I had spent too many years building myself up from the pieces they left behind. Whatever their reason was for wanting to come now, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to let them break me again. This time, the door to my life would only open on my terms. I heard the sound before I saw it. The crunch of tires rolling slowly over the gravel of my long driveway. When I looked out the window, a shiny black car glided to a stop in front of the mansion. The doors opened with a kind of practiced grace, and out stepped my parents. Emma in her pearls, Harry in a tailored suit. Both of them dressed as if they were arriving at a gala instead of the home of the son they had ignored for nearly a decade. Their smiles were wide, almost blinding, but I could see through them. They weren't real. They were masks, polished and fake, worn by people who thought charm could erase the past. Then Tom appeared. He stepped out more slowly, his hand guiding Julie, his wife. As if the two of them were walking a red carpet. Julie glanced at the mansion with quick eyes, sizing it up, her lips pressed into something between admiration and envy. Tom adjusted his watch, puffed out his chest, and followed behind our parents like he still believed he was the center of every room he walked into. As they moved toward the front door, I felt my chest tighten. Memories slammed into me, sharp and heavy. My mother turning me away at the family reunion. My father's silence when I begged for support. The empty years of birthdays and holidays without even a word. To see them now standing on my property, smiling as if none of that had happened, filled me with a storm I could barely hold back. The doorbell rang, its sound echoing through the hall. For a moment I just stood there, hand on the knob, steadying my breath. Finally, I opened the door. "Bill, darling," my mother said with a bright smile, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "You look wonderful. What a home you have here." My father chimed in with a nod as though he owned the place himself. "Yes, quite impressive. You've done well for yourself." Behind them, Tom smirked like this with some casual family drop-in, like the years of absence and cruelty didn't hang in the air between us. Julie gave me a smile that didn't touch her eyes. I didn't step aside. I didn't gesture for them to come in. I just stood there in the doorway, my hands still on the frame, watching them shift on the front step. For once, the power was mine. The silence stretched heavy and uncomfortable. Their fake smiles wavered under the weight of my stillness. I knew they expected me to fold, to open the door wide, and welcome them in like nothing had happened. But I wasn't that boy anymore. I let them stand there waiting, their expensive clothes catching the sunlight, their polished faces slowly cracking. It was the first time in years I saw them uncertain, and I wasn't about to rush to ease that feeling. I finally let them inside, but only because I wanted to hear what excuse they had after all these years. We sat around the long dining room table, the one I usually reserved for clients or close friends. The air was stiff, and the sound of their voices felt foreign in my home. Emma was the first to speak, her tone dripping with the same sweetness she'd used at the door. "We missed you, Bill," she said, her fingers lightly tapping the edge of her wine glass. "It's been far too long. We shouldn't let silly misunderstandings keep us apart." My father nodded quickly as if rehearsed. Family is family, no matter what. Whatever happened in the past doesn't matter now. What matters is that we're here together. The words rolled off their tongues so easily, but I could feel how hollow they were. They weren't here because they missed me. I stayed quiet, watching them twist the story, pretending the years of silence never happened. Tom and Julie exchanged glances, both of them uncomfortable, though Tom tried to hide it behind a smirk. Eventually, the cracks showed. Harry leaned forward and let the truth slip. "Tom's had a rough time recently," he said. His voice lost its fake warmth. "Some of his investments didn't go as planned." I turned my eyes to my brother. He avoided my gaze, fiddling with his watch. Julie shifted in her seat, her lips pressed tightly together. Emma jumped in quickly, trying to soften the blow. "He's lost nearly everything, Bill. It's been so hard for him, for all of us. That's why we came. We thought that maybe you could help your brother get back on his feet." The words hit me like a slap, though I had been expecting something like this. All the sweet talk, the smiles, the sudden appearance at my gates. It wasn't about me. It never was. It was about money. My jaw tightened, and I could feel heat rising in my chest. They hadn't cared when I was struggling, when I was living off scraps, when I was sick and alone. But now that their golden boy had stumbled, suddenly, family was family. Suddenly, my existence mattered because I had something they wanted. I looked at Tom, waiting for him to speak. He finally met my eyes and shrugged. "It's not that big a deal. You've done well for yourself. You can afford to help. It's what families do." The arrogance in his tone made my stomach twist. He wasn't asking. He was expecting. Just like always, he assumed the world owed him. And now he thought I did too. I sat back in my chair, forcing my face to stay calm, even as my teeth clenched. Inside, the answer was already forming. I knew exactly what this was. They hadn't come here for me. They had come for my success, for the house I built, for the money I earned, and that made their smiles feel colder than ever. The silence after Tom's words about me helping him was heavy. I felt it pressing against my chest, but instead of breaking, I leaned into it. I let the quiet sit until it made them squirm. Then I spoke, my voice sharp but steady. "Tell me why I should help you? Where were you all when I needed help with tuition?" I asked, my eyes locked on my parents. They shifted uncomfortably, Emma glancing at Harry. Harry cleared his throat but said nothing. I didn't give them time to gather excuses. "Where were you when I lay in a hospital bed alone? Do you know what it felt like to wake up weak and scared? Looking at the door, waiting for someone who never comes." My voice cracked for just a second, but I studied it. "You weren't there. None of you were." Emma opened her mouth, but I didn't let her speak. "And where was my invitation for 8 years? Every birthday, every holiday, every reunion, everyone else got one. Everyone but me. Do you think I didn't notice? Do you think I didn't see the photos?" They were all staring at me now, caught under the weight of my words. Embarrassment flickered across their faces, but it wasn't real regret. It was the shame of being confronted, not the sorrow of being wrong. Harry muttered something about misunderstandings, but his voice was weak, unconvincing. Emma tried to smile, but it looked broken, her lips twitching with nerves. Julie lowered her eyes, pretending she wasn't part of this. Tom, though, didn't flinch. His patience snapped, and his voice rose louder than anyone else's. "You owe us," he blurted, pointing at me as though his words carried some kind of authority. "We're family. That's what family does. They take care of each other." The rage inside me burned hotter, but I didn't raise my voice to match his. I didn't need to. My fury was sharper when controlled, each word like glass cutting through the air. "No," I said, steady and cold. You made it clear I wasn't family. You said it with every invitation I never got. You said it with your silence when I begged for help. You said it when you walked past me as if I didn't exist. Don't come here now and pretend those years never happened. The table went quiet again, the weight of my words filling the air. For the first time, I saw them falter. Not because they finally understood, but because they realized I wasn't bending. I wasn't the boy they had once dismissed. I sat back in my chair, my pulse steady, my jaw firm. Tom's anger didn't move me. Harry's excuses didn't move me. And Emma's fake sweetness couldn't touch me anymore. They had drawn the lines years ago, and I had learned to live without them. Now standing in my home, they were the ones on the outside. I leaned forward, folding my hands on the table, and spoke clearly so none of them could twist my words. I'm not bailing Tom out. Not today, not ever. You will not use my name, my money, or this house to rebuild the image you destroyed on your own. Their faces froze, and for a moment, no one said anything. The silence was almost satisfying. But I wasn't finished. Throwing them out right away would have been easy. Too easy. They needed to see what I had built without them. They needed to feel it in their bones. So, I stood and told them to follow me. The first stop was the living room. Sunlight spilling across the tall windows and polished floors. Their eyes darted around at the art on the walls, the rich textures, the warm glow of the space. I could almost hear their thoughts, wondering how the boy they abandoned could create something so beautiful. Next, I led them to the kitchen, gleaming with marble counters and gold accents. Emma's eyes lingered on every detail, her lips pressed thin. I didn't have to say it out loud. The message was clear. This was the kitchen of someone who had thrived without her. We walked through guest suites, each one styled differently, each one more stunning than the last. Julie trailed behind, her gaze sweeping over everything, envy shining through her polite smile. Tom kept his arms folded, trying to look unimpressed. But I saw the flicker in his eyes when he thought I wasn't watching. Every room was a statement. Every piece of furniture, every polished surface, every corner of that house screamed that what they denied me hadn't broken me. It had made me stronger. I didn't need their approval, their money, or their presence to build this life. Finally, I brought them to my office. The air shifted as soon as they stepped inside. This was the heart of my home, the place that told the truest story. Along one wall, frame after frame covered the space, contracts from major clients, design awards, and degrees I had earned while working myself to the bone. Proof in black and white that I had done it all alone. They stared at the wall in silence. Harry rubbed his chin. Emma's eyes darted between the frames. And Tom clenched his jaw. None of them spoke because there was nothing they could say. Every piece of paper on that wall was evidence of their absence. I stood in the center of the room watching them absorb it. This, I said quietly, is what comes from years of being shut out. I didn't need you then, and I don't need you now. The words hung in the air, heavy and final. For the first time, I saw them understand. Not that they had wronged me, but that I would never be theirs to use again. Emma was the first to break the heavy silence. Her voice trembled as she reached for me, her hands twisting together like she was trying to wring out some kind of pity. Bill, please. We didn't mean for things to go so far. We're still your parents. You can't just turn your back on us. Families fight, but they forgive. You have to forgive us. Her words might have sounded sincere to someone else, but I could hear the desperation underneath. It wasn't love, it was need. Harry cleared his throat and leaned forward. His voice was calm but edged with guilt tripping. Think about everything we've done for you when you were younger. Think about the roof we gave you. The food on the table. You wouldn't be who you are today without us. Don't throw away your family over old wounds. His tone was practiced. The same kind of lectures I'd grown up with, but now they rang hollow. Before I could answer, Tom's temper snapped. He slammed his palm against the table, his face red with anger. This is ridiculous. You're acting like a child. You have more than enough to help me, and you're being selfish. We're blood, Bill. Yours. Yomi. His voice echoed harshly in the room. But I stayed still. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. Instead, I stood slowly and walked to the front door. My expensive shoes tapping against the floor, sharp and steady. I pulled the door open wide, the cool air rushing in from outside. I turned back to face them. My voice was calm, but it carried all the years of pain they had left me with. You excluded me for 8 years. That door was shut to me. Now I'm shutting mine to you. Emma gasped, shaking her head furiously. Bill, don't do this. You'll regret it. We're still your family. Harry muttered something about me being ungrateful. Tom's protests grew louder, spilling into demands and accusations, but none of it touched me. Their words bounced off the walls, empty and powerless. I moved toward them, my hand firm on the door. It's time for you to leave. One by one, they shuffled toward the doorway, their protests mixing into a messy chorus. Emma's begging, Harry's guilt, Tom's fury. It all blended into noise that no longer reached me. I guided them outside, each step pushing them further from the home they thought they could claim a part of. As they walked down the long driveway, their voices carried back to me, fading with every step. Emma's pleas cracked. Harry tried to sound reasonable. Tom shouted until his words broke apart in the distance, but none of it mattered anymore. I closed the door gently, the sound echoing through the hall like a final note. They had come here expecting me to fold to save them, to play the role of their safety net. Instead, they left humiliated, forced to face a truth they had never imagined, that the son they had cast aside would never again be theirs to use. The house was silent after the door closed. For the first time that day, I could hear nothing but the sound of my own breath and the faint ticking of the clock in the hallway. The air felt different, lighter somehow, though there was still a sting in my chest. I stood there for a long moment, my hand resting on the door, as if sealing it had sealed away more than just their presence. The quiet spread through every room, wrapping around me. It wasn't the emptiness I used to fear when I lived alone in a small apartment, wondering if anyone cared about me. This silence was gentler, almost like peace. It was bittersweet. Part of me still ached with the thought that I had parents who had chosen greed over love, who had chosen one child while shutting out the other. That ache would probably never fully leave me. But alongside it was something stronger, a calm, steady pride in the life I had built without them. I didn't need revenge to ruin them. They had ruined themselves with their choices, with their endless favoritism and selfishness. It wasn't me shutting the door that hurt them most. It was being forced to see that they were not part of my success story. Their power over me had disappeared long ago, replaced by my own strength, my own success. I walked slowly through the halls, past the rooms I had shown them, each one holding pieces of my journey. The walls, the furniture, the awards, all reminders that I had survived everything they tried to deny me. I had created a life worth living, and that was enough. When I reached the center of the living room, I looked around at the home I had once promised myself would be mine alone. The sunlight touched the walls, warm and soft, and I felt something inside me settle. I whispered into the stillness, words that had been waiting to be said. Family isn't who shares your blood. It's who never shuts you out. The truth of it sank into me. I thought about the people who had stood by me over the years. Friends, clients who became mentors. Even kind strangers who believed in my work when no one else did. They were my real family. The ones who never turned their backs. The ones who didn't need my success to see my worth. I let out a long breath. And with it, years of heaviness seemed to slip away. I wasn't just closing the door on my parents. I was closing it on the years of pain, loneliness, and doubt they had planted in me. That chapter was over. Standing there in the quiet, I felt stronger than ever. The mansion was no longer just a house. It was proof that I had survived betrayal, rejection, and abandonment. It was proof that I had chosen myself, and that choice had saved me. What do you think about the life of Bill Gates? Do you think he should have forgiven his family? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story left you wanting more, Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more unforgettable stories.